The day my brother laughed in my face and called my finance degree glorified toilet paper was the same day I decided that when they came crawling back for money, I'd be ready. What they didn't know was that in 5 years, I'd be sitting across from them at First National Bank, holding their loan application in my hands, with the power to approve or deny their dreams with a single signature. If you've ever been the family disappointment who turned their life around and got the ultimate revenge, this story is going to hit different. I'm talking about the kind of justice that makes you want to slow clap. Before we dive in, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love connecting with people who understand that sometimes the sweetest revenge is just being successful when they said you'd fail. My name is Kaitlyn Matthews, and I'm 28 years old. What I'm about to tell you happened 3 months ago, but the setup started 5 years earlier when my family made it crystal clear that I was the failure of the Matthews dynasty. Picture this, Thanksgiving dinner, 2019. The whole family gathered around my parents' dining room table in their McMansion, the one my dad bought after his construction company started booming. My older brother Scott, the golden child, had just announced he was expanding his auto repair shop to 3 locations. My younger sister Ashley had just gotten engaged to a doctor. And then there was me, fresh out of college with my bachelor's degree in finance, sitting there like the odd one out. "So, Kaitlyn," my Uncle Frank said, cutting into his turkey, "what exactly are you planning to do with that finance degree?" The way he said it, you'd think I'd majored in interpretive dance. I straightened up, excited to share my plans. Actually, I just got accepted into the management training program at First National Bank. It's really competitive, they only take 12 people a year, and Scott snorted into his beer. A bank? Seriously? You're going to be one of those people who sits behind a desk all day pushing papers around? It's not just pushing papers, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'll be learning every aspect of commercial lending, risk assessment, investment management, my dad repeated, shaking his head. Kaitlyn, sweetheart, that's not a real job. That's playing with other people's money and pretending it's important. My mom reached over and patted my hand condescendingly. Honey, maybe you should consider something more practical. Ashley's friend Monica works at the beauty salon downtown. I bet she could get you a job doing nails or something. The table erupted in laughter. My cousin Charles nearly choked on his stuffing. From finance major to nail tech. That's quite the career pivot. I felt my cheeks burning. There's nothing wrong with doing nails, but I want to work in finance. I'm good with numbers, I understand market trends, Scott laughed. Listen to her. She thinks she's Wolf of Wall Street or something. Kaitlyn, you couldn't even balance your checkbook in high school. That was 6 years ago, and face it, kiddo, my dad interrupted, using that nickname that made me feel about 5 years old. Banking is a man's world. You don't have what it takes to make real money in finance. Hell, half the people who work at banks are just glorified cashiers. My grandfather, the family patriarch who'd built his own successful restaurant chain from nothing, leaned back in his chair. In my day, women had jobs that made sense. Teaching, nursing, secretary work. This finance nonsense is just setting yourself up for disappointment. But Grandpa, I protested, the world has changed. Women are getting ideas above their station, he cut me off. Mark my words, you'll be back here in 2 years asking for a job at one of the restaurants, and we'll find you something appropriate. Ashley giggled. Maybe by then you'll have found a nice guy to settle down with. That's really what matters anyway, right? I looked around the table at my family, all of them nodding along, completely convinced that my 4 years of studying economics, corporate finance, and investment theory were a complete waste. That my 3.8 GPA meant nothing. That my acceptance into one of the most competitive training programs in the state was just dumb luck. You know what your problem is, Kaitlyn? Scott said, pointing his fork at me. You think you're smarter than everyone else. You think that fancy degree makes you better than us. But at the end of the day, Dad's construction company makes more money in a month than you'll probably see in a year. Scott's right, Dad agreed. Real businesses, real work, that's what builds wealth. Not sitting in some corporate office pretending to be important. I pushed my plate away, my appetite completely gone. I think I'm going to head home. Already? Mom asked. We haven't even had dessert yet. I'm not really hungry anymore. As I stood up, my Uncle Frank called out, Hey, Kaitlyn, when you realize that degree was a waste of time and money, don't come crying to us. We tried to warn you. The whole table laughed again. Even Ashley, who I thought might at least be neutral, was giggling behind her hand. I grabbed my coat and headed for the door, but I could still hear them talking about me as I left. She'll figure it out eventually, Dad was saying. Reality has a way of knocking people down to size. Poor kid, someone else added. She really thinks she's going to make it in the big leagues. That night, I sat in my studio apartment, the one I could barely afford on my part-time retail job, and made myself a promise. I was going to succeed. Not just for me, but to prove every single one of them wrong. The management training program at First National Bank was brutal. 12-hour days, weekend seminars, constant testing, and pressure that made some of my classmates crack within the first month. Out of the 12 people who started, only 7 of us made it through the full 18 months. But I thrived. I absorbed everything they taught us about commercial lending, risk assessment, and relationship management. I studied market reports until my eyes burned. I learned the intricate dance of loan approvals, the delicate balance between institutional policy and client needs. During my rotation in commercial lending, I discovered I had a natural talent for reading financial statements and assessing business viability. My supervisor, Patricia Morrison, took me under her wing. You have something special, Kaitlyn, she told me after I'd successfully structured a complex loan for a manufacturing company. You understand not just the numbers, but the people behind them. That's rare in this business. By the end of the program, I was offered a position as a junior commercial loan officer. The salary was modest but respectable, $48,000 a year, which felt like a fortune compared to my retail job. I called my parents to share the good news. That's nice, dear, Mom said, her tone flat. How much are you making? When I told her, there was a pause. Well, I suppose that's better than nothing. Scott just bought another building for his shop. The bank loan was for $200,000. Can you imagine? Your little brother, getting approved for that kind of money. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I bit my tongue. Over the next 2 years, I worked my way up to senior loan officer. I specialized in small business loans and commercial real estate financing. My portfolio grew, my success rate was consistently above average, and my salary climbed to $72,000 annually. But whenever I saw my family, the narrative never changed. At Scott's wedding, my Aunt Danielle asked what I was doing for work. I'm a senior loan officer at First National, I said proudly. Oh, that's nice. Still at the bank, huh? Haven't they promoted you to management yet? At Ashley's baby shower, my cousin Jenna wanted to know if I'd figured out my career situation yet. I'm actually doing really well. I just got a promotion to commercial lending manager, and, that sounds complicated, she interrupted. Are you happy though? I mean, really happy? Because Zachary makes great money as an electrician, and he's home every evening. Work-life balance is so important. It was like they couldn't hear what I was actually saying. Every achievement was minimized, every success was qualified with some concern about my personal life or some comparison to what someone else was doing. The breaking point came at my parents' anniversary party 2.5 years into my banking career. I'd just been promoted to vice president of commercial lending, making $95,000 a year plus bonuses. At 26, I was the youngest VP in the bank's history. I was managing a team of 8 loan officers and overseeing a portfolio worth over $40 million. I was excited to share the news, thinking that surely this achievement would finally get their attention. VP of Commercial Lending, Dad repeated when I told him. What does that actually mean though? Like, in real terms? It means I oversee all the business loans for companies with annual revenues between $5 and $50 million. I manage a team, I set lending policies, I work directly with the president of the bank on strategic initiatives, but you're still just an employee, right? Scott interrupted. I mean, you don't own anything. You're making someone else rich. I'm building a career, Scott. I have stock options, performance bonuses, a retirement plan, stock options, he laughed. Those are just promises, Kaitlyn. I own 3 auto shops now, and I'm looking at buying a 4th. That's real wealth. That's something you can pass down to your kids. If you ever have kids, Ashley added sweetly. You're not getting any younger, you know. I felt that familiar frustration building. Can't you just be proud of me? Can't you acknowledge that maybe I know what I'm doing? Of course we're proud, Mom said quickly. It's just, well, we worry about you. You're so focused on work that you're missing out on the important things in life. Like what? Like family. Like relationships. Like having something real and tangible to show for all your effort. Dad nodded. Your grandfather always said that unless you own something, you're just another employee. And employees are replaceable. That night, I went home to my new 2-bedroom apartment, the one I'd been able to afford thanks to my promotion, and I made another promise to myself. I wasn't going to keep trying to prove anything to them. I was going to focus on my career, build my success, and let the results speak for themselves. I threw myself into work with renewed focus. I spent the next 2 years building relationships with major clients, developing expertise in complex commercial financing, and establishing myself as one of the bank's most valuable officers. My portfolio grew to over $60 million. I was bringing in more new business than any other loan officer in the bank's history. My team respected me, my clients trusted me, and the bank's president started including me in executive strategy meetings. By the time I turned 28, I was making $125,000 a year plus bonuses that often added another $30,000 to my annual income. I bought a house, a beautiful 3-bedroom colonial in the best neighborhood in town. I drove a new car, had money in savings, and was building real wealth. But my family still saw me as the kid with the useless degree who was playing pretend in the corporate world. That all changed on a Wednesday morning in March when Patricia Morrison knocked on my office door. Kaitlyn, I need you to look at this loan application, she said, setting a thick folder on my desk. It's a big one. Commercial real estate development project. I opened the folder and felt my heart skip a beat. The application was from Matthews Construction Company. My father's business. I stared at the paperwork, processing what I was seeing. They were applying for a $1.8 million loan to purchase and develop a 12-acre commercial property. The plan was to build a small shopping complex with anchor stores and several smaller retail spaces. This was huge. This was the kind of project that could set my father's company up for life or bankrupt them if it went wrong. And it was sitting on my desk, waiting for my approval or denial. I read through the application carefully, trying to set aside my personal feelings and evaluate it professionally. The financials were interesting. Matthews Construction had grown significantly over the past few years, but their debt-to-equity ratio was concerning. They'd leveraged heavily to expand, and while their revenue was strong, their cash flow was inconsistent. The construction industry is notoriously cyclical, and they hadn't built up the reserves I'd expect to see for a project of this magnitude. More concerning was their inexperience with commercial real estate development. They were primarily a residential construction company that built custom homes and did remodeling work. This would be their first major commercial development project. The property they wanted to develop was in a good location, but the market analysis they'd provided was optimistic to the point of being unrealistic. They were projecting rental rates that were 15% higher than comparable properties in the area. From a purely financial perspective, this loan was borderline. It wasn't an obvious approval, but it wasn't an obvious denial either. It was the kind of application that could go either way depending on how the loan officer weighted various risk factors. In other words, it was completely within my discretionary authority to approve or deny it. I set the folder aside and tried to focus on my other work, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. This was the moment I'd fantasized about for years, the chance to show my family exactly how much power my useless degree had given me. But I needed to be smart about this. I needed to handle it professionally. I called Patricia into my office. "This Matthews Construction application," I said. "Do you know anything about the company?" "Only what's in the file." "Why?" "Matthews Construction is my father's company." Patricia's eyebrows shot up. "Oh. That's complicated." "I want to handle this by the book," I said. "Complete due diligence, independent property appraisal, the works. If there's any question about the decision, I want it to be bulletproof." "Of course. Do you want me to assign it to someone else?" "There might be a conflict of interest." I considered it for a moment, then shook my head. "No. I know this company better than anyone else would. I can give it the most thorough evaluation." Over the next week, I dove deep into Matthews Construction's finances. I pulled credit reports, analyzed their payment history with suppliers, and reviewed their insurance coverage. I had the property independently appraised and commissioned a market study from a third-party firm. The more I investigated, the more concerned I became. Matthews Construction had been taking on increasingly risky projects to fuel their growth. They'd had 2 projects in the past year that had gone significantly over budget, eating into their profit margins. Their accounts receivable were higher than they should be, suggesting they were having trouble collecting payments from some clients. Most concerning was what I discovered when I dug into my father's personal finances. He'd personally guaranteed several of the company's loans, and he'd taken out a substantial home equity line of credit to inject cash into the business during a slow period last year. If this development project failed, it wouldn't just hurt the company. It would bankrupt my father personally. The independent market study confirmed my suspicions about their projected rental rates. The consultant estimated that realistic rates would be about 12% lower than what Matthews Construction had projected, which would significantly impact the project's profitability. After 2 weeks of analysis, I had my answer. Based on the company's financial position, their lack of experience with commercial development, and the questionable market projections, this loan represented an unacceptable level of risk for the bank. I was going to have to deny it. But first, I decided to do something I'd never done before. I was going to meet with the applicant in person. I called my father's office and spoke to his secretary. "Hi, this is Kaitlyn Matthews from First National Bank. I'm the loan officer reviewing Mr. Matthews' application. I'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss the project." "Of course," she said. "Let me check his schedule." How about Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock? That works perfectly. Friday afternoon, I put on my best navy blue suit, grabbed the loan file, and drove to my father's office. I'd never been there before. None of us kids had ever been invited to see where Dad worked. The building was impressive. A modern two-story structure with Matthews Construction prominently displayed on the front in gold lettering. I parked next to my father's pickup truck and walked through the front door. The receptionist looked up as I entered. "You must be from the bank. Mr. Matthews is expecting you." She led me down a hallway lined with photos of construction projects, past several offices where I could see people working at computers and drafting tables, to a corner office with windows overlooking the company's equipment yard. My father was sitting behind a large wooden desk, wearing khakis and a polo shirt with the company logo. He looked up as I walked in, and for a moment, his face was blank. Then recognition dawned. "Kaitlyn? What are you? Why are you here?" "Hello, Dad. I'm here about your loan application." He stared at me for a long moment, processing what that meant. You're the loan officer?" "I'm the vice president of commercial lending at First National Bank," I said, sitting down in the chair across from his desk. "Your application was assigned to me for review." The color drained from his face. "I didn't know. I mean, I knew you worked at the bank, but I didn't realize that I was in a position to approve or deny loans of this magnitude." He nodded mutely. I opened the loan file and spread the documents across his desk. "Let's talk about your project." For the next hour, I walked him through my analysis. I explained my concerns about the company's debt ratios, the lack of commercial development experience, and the unrealistic market projections. My father listened without interrupting, his face growing paler with each point I raised. "So what does this mean?" he asked when I finished. "It means I have some serious reservations about approving this loan." He leaned back in his chair, running his hands through his hair. "Kaitlyn, this project, this is everything. This is my chance to take the company to the next level. To build something really significant." "I understand that, Dad. But I have a responsibility to protect the bank's interests." "What would it take?" he asked. "To get approval? What would I need to change?" I pulled out a notepad and started writing. "You'd need to bring more equity to the project. At least another $300,000. You'd need to partner with an experienced commercial developer. And you'd need to revise your market projections to be more realistic." He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the list I'd given him. $300,000, he said finally. "I don't have that kind of cash." "Then you'd need to find investors or consider a smaller, less ambitious project. If I scale it back, the numbers don't work. The whole concept depends on the size and scope." I closed the file and leaned back in my chair. "Then I'm afraid I can't recommend approval." My father looked up at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. "Kaitlyn, please. You know me. You know I'm good for it. I've never defaulted on a loan in my life. This isn't personal, Dad. It's business." "But it is personal," he said desperately. "You're my daughter. Doesn't that count for something?" I felt a cold smile spread across my face. "You're right. It is personal. Let me ask you something, Dad. Do you remember Thanksgiving dinner, 2019? He looked confused. "What does that have to do with anything? You told me my finance degree was worthless. You said banking wasn't a real job. You said I was just playing with other people's money and pretending it was important." The confusion on his face was replaced by dawning realization. "You said I didn't have what it takes to make real money in finance," I continued. You said I'd be back in 2 years asking for a job at Grandpa's restaurant. Kaitlyn, and now here you are, asking me to approve the largest loan in your company's history. Asking me to risk the bank's money on your business plan. Asking your daughter, the one with the useless degree, to hand you $1.8 million. He opened his mouth to speak, but I wasn't finished. For 5 years, Dad, you've dismissed everything I've accomplished. Every promotion, every achievement, every success. You've treated my career like it was some kind of phase I'd grow out of. I stood up and gathered the loan documents. Well, this is my career. This is what I do with my worthless degree. I analyze risk. I make decisions about who gets access to capital and who doesn't. And right now, I'm deciding that Matthew's construction represents an unacceptable risk to my bank. Kaitlyn, please, the application will be formally denied on Monday. You'll receive written notification within 48 hours. I headed for the door, then turned back. Oh, and Dad? You might want to start looking for alternative financing. Based on your current financial position, I don't think you're going to have much luck with the other banks in town either. I walked out of his office, past the receptionist, and through the lobby. My hands were steady as I opened my car door, but once I was inside, I started shaking. I'd done it. I'd actually done it. I drove back to the bank, went to my office, and formally processed the loan denial. Patricia stopped by as I was finishing the paperwork. How did the meeting go? She asked. The application is being denied. Risk factors are too high. She nodded. Probably the right call. These family construction companies often bite off more than they can chew with commercial development. That weekend, my phone started ringing. First it was my mother. Kaitlyn, your father told me what happened. How could you do this to him? I did my job, Mom. Your job? This is your family. This is the company that put you through college. Actually, Mom, student loans put me through college. And Dad made it very clear over the years that he didn't think my education was worth the money. You can't be serious. You're going to destroy your father's business over some hurt feelings? I'm not destroying anything. I'm protecting the bank from a bad investment. This is unbelievable. After everything we've done for you, what exactly have you done for me? I interrupted. Name one thing you've done to support my career. The line was quiet for a moment. We're your family, she said finally. And I'm a bank officer. I have a fiduciary responsibility to my institution and its shareholders. She hung up on me. Next was Scott. What the hell is wrong with you? He started without preamble. Dad built that company from nothing. He deserves this opportunity. He deserves whatever he can qualify for based on sound financial analysis. You're being vindictive. This is payback for all those times we gave you shit about your career. If that's how you want to interpret it. Kaitlyn, come on. Be reasonable. Dad's dream is on the line here. Scott, let me ask you something. When you needed a loan for your auto shops, did you come to me? What? No, I went to my regular banker, right? You went to someone who would evaluate your application based on merit. Well, I evaluated Dad's application based on merit, and it doesn't qualify. That's bullshit and you know it. Actually, it's banking. But I wouldn't expect you to understand the difference. He hung up too. The calls continued all weekend. Ashley, my aunts and uncles, even my grandfather. Everyone had an opinion about my decision, and none of them were supportive. But I didn't care. For the first time in my adult life, I felt truly powerful. I felt like my achievements finally mattered. Monday morning, I sent the formal denial letter. By Tuesday, the whole family knew. My Uncle Frank left me a voicemail. "I hope you're proud of yourself. Your father worked his whole life to build that company, and you're tearing it down out of spite." My cousin Charles sent a text, "Family comes first, Kaitlyn. You've forgotten where you came from." Even Ashley, who rarely got involved in family drama, called to plead with me. "Kaitlyn, I know Dad and everyone haven't always been the most supportive, but this is different. This is his whole future. And my career is my whole future," I replied. "But none of you have ever cared about that. That's not fair." "We do care, really? When was the last time any of you asked me about my work? When was the last time anyone in this family acknowledged my success?" She was quiet. "I'm not trying to hurt Dad," I continued. "I'm just doing my job. The same job you've all been telling me doesn't matter for the past 5 years." By Wednesday, word had spread beyond the family. My father's secretary called to tell me that other family members had been calling the bank, trying to speak to my supervisor about my decision. I went to Patricia's office immediately. "I need to let you know that my family is unhappy with the loan denial," I said. "They might try to pressure the bank to override my decision." Patricia looked concerned. "Have they contacted you directly?" "Constantly. And apparently they've been calling here too." "Kaitlyn, you need to document all of this. Any contact from family members regarding the loan needs to be reported through proper channels." "I understand. And I want you to know that your decision has my full support. I reviewed your analysis, and it's thorough and well-reasoned. The denial is absolutely justified." That afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. "Kaitlyn? This is James Peterson from Peterson and Associates." I recognized the name. Peterson and Associates was one of the most prominent law firms in the state. "Mr. Peterson, how can I help you? I understand you recently denied a loan application from Matthews Construction." My blood ran cold. "I'm sorry, but I can't discuss specific loan applications I'm representing Matthews Construction. They're considering their legal options regarding what they believe to be a discriminatory denial." "Discriminatory how?" "They believe the denial was based on personal bias rather than sound financial analysis." I felt a moment of panic, then remembered Patricia's words about documentation. "Mr. Peterson, I can assure you that the denial was based entirely on financial factors. If Matthews Construction would like to appeal the decision, they're welcome to follow the bank's formal appeals process." "We may be doing more than appealing, Ms. Matthews. We're exploring whether this constitutes a violation of federal lending regulations." After he hung up, I sat in my office staring at the phone. They were really going to try to destroy my career over this. I called Patricia immediately and told her about the conversation. "Don't worry," she said. "We'll involve our legal department." "But Kaitlyn, your analysis was rock solid. There's no way they can claim discrimination when you have 18 pages of financial documentation supporting the denial." That evening, I went home to my beautiful house and poured myself a glass of wine. I sat on my back deck, looking out at my perfectly landscaped yard, and thought about what was happening. My family was so convinced that I'd denied the loan out of spite that they were willing to sue me and the bank. They couldn't conceive of the possibility that their project simply wasn't financially viable. Even now, even when I held their future in my hands, they couldn't respect my professional judgment. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Your father is devastated. I hope you can live with yourself." I typed back, "I can live with myself just fine. The question is whether Dad can live with the consequences of his poor financial planning." She didn't respond. Thursday morning, I arrived at work to find Patricia waiting in my office with 2 men in suits. "Kaitlyn, this is David Chen from our legal department and Robert Martinez from compliance. They want to review the Matthews construction file. We spent 2 hours going through every aspect of my analysis. They examined my documentation, questioned my methodology, and reviewed the bank's lending policies. Ms. Matthews, David Chin said when we finished, "This is one of the most thorough loan analyses I've seen. Your decision is not only justified, it's exemplary risk management." Robert Martinez nodded. "If anything, you could have denied this application much more quickly. The debt-to-equity ratio alone would have been sufficient grounds." "So if they sue?" "Let them," David said. "We'll counterclaim for frivolous litigation. This is clearly a family dispute masquerading as a legal issue." I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Friday afternoon, I got another call from my father. "Kaitlyn, I'm calling to ask you one more time to reconsider." "Dad, my decision is final. I found additional investors. I can bring more equity to the project." "How much additional equity?" $50,000. I almost laughed. "Dad, I told you that you needed at least $300,000 in additional equity. $50,000 doesn't change the risk profile. It's all I can raise right now. Then the project isn't viable." There was a long pause. "You know, Kaitlyn, your grandfather was right about you." "What did he say?" "He said you'd gotten too big for your britches. He said success had gone to your head and made you forget where you came from." "Where I came from, Dad, is a family that never believed in me. Success didn't change me. It revealed who I always was." "And who is that?" "Someone who doesn't need your approval anymore." I hung up. #F, climactic revenge payoff *. The following Monday morning, I walked into the bank with a sense of anticipation I hadn't felt in years. I'd spent the weekend thinking about everything that had happened, and I realized that denying the loan was just the beginning. There was something else I needed to do. I called Patricia into my office. "I want to write a comprehensive market analysis of the commercial real estate development opportunities in our area," I said. "Something we can use to guide our lending strategy going forward." "That's a great idea." "What prompted this?" "The Matthews construction application made me realize we need better tools for evaluating development projects. I want to create a framework that other loan officers can use." What I didn't tell Patricia was that this market analysis would include detailed information about why the Matthews construction project specifically was financially unviable. And I was going to make sure it was distributed to every major lender in the region. I spent the next 2 weeks creating the most comprehensive analysis of my career. I documented every aspect of the local commercial real estate market, including supply and demand projections, rental rate trends, and risk factors for new developments. In the section on case studies of rejected projects, I included a detailed, but anonymized, analysis of a hypothetical construction company seeking to develop retail space despite having inadequate experience, insufficient equity, and unrealistic market projections. Anyone in the banking industry who read it would immediately understand why such a project represented an unacceptable risk. I presented the analysis to the bank's executive committee, and they were so impressed that they decided to share it with the Regional Banking Association as a best practices example. Within a month, my market analysis had been distributed to loan officers at every major bank within a 50-mile radius. 2 weeks later, my father called me at work. "Kaitlyn, what did you do?" "I'm sorry, what are you referring to?" "I've applied to 4 other banks for financing. They've all denied my application within days. One loan officer told me that my project was a textbook example of what not to fund." I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. "That's unfortunate, Dad. Maybe you should consider a different project. You know exactly what you did." "I did my job." I created a market analysis that will help other banks make better lending decisions. If that analysis happens to highlight the problems with your project, well, maybe that should tell you something about your project. You've destroyed everything I worked for. No, Dad. You did that when you decided to pursue a project you couldn't afford with money you didn't have. I'll never forgive you for this. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything from you anymore. 3 months later, Matthews Construction had to sell one of their existing properties to cover operating expenses. Scott's auto shops were struggling because Dad had borrowed against them to try to fund the development project. The family was in financial chaos, and it was all anyone could talk about at family gatherings I no longer attended. But the most satisfying part came 6 months after the loan denial. I was promoted to Senior Vice President and Regional Lending Manager. My new salary was $175,000 per year, plus bonuses and stock options that could add another $50,000 annually. The promotion was announced in the local business journal, along with a photo and a detailed article about my achievements in commercial lending. My assistant handed me a copy of the article on Friday afternoon. Congratulations, boss. Well deserved. I read through the article, which detailed my success in growing the bank's commercial portfolio by 40% over 3 years and my innovative approach to risk management. Then I did something I'd never done before. I made copies of the article and mailed them to every member of my family. No note, no explanation. Just the article highlighting my success. My mother called that evening. "We got your article," she said. And what? What do you want us to say?" "I don't want you to say anything, Mom. I just wanted you to see what success with a useless degree actually looks like. Kaitlyn, this has gone on long enough. Your father is struggling. The business is in trouble. Can't you find it in your heart to help? The same way you helped me when I was struggling to establish my career? That's different. You were young, you were figuring things out. I was 23 years old with a college degree and a clear career plan. I wasn't figuring anything out. I was building something. But none of you could see it. We see it now. Too late." Standing in my office today, looking out at the city where I built my career and my reputation, I sometimes think about what might have been different if my family had supported me from the beginning. If they'd believed in my potential instead of dismissing my dreams. But then I realized that their doubt made me stronger. Their dismissal taught me to rely on myself. And their final desperate attempt to manipulate me gave me the opportunity to show them exactly what I'm capable of. I don't regret my decisions. Not the loan denial, not the market analysis, not cutting ties with people who never really saw me as anything more than their least important family member. Success isn't just about money or titles or recognition. Sometimes the sweetest success is simply being right when everyone said you were wrong. Have you ever had family members who couldn't see your potential until it was too late? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear about other people who proved the doubters wrong. And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of professional justice and family karma. Remember, the best revenge isn't getting even. It's succeeding so completely that your success speaks for itself.